What are some of podcast listeners' biggest pet peeves? What are some of the things that could be keeping them from subscribing to your show or just clicking on to the next podcast? Well, I've been doing a ton of Googling. I found some really fun forums and blog posts, and I've put together the top 10 things that annoy podcast listeners, and I'm going to share them with you. Hey, welcome podcastero to the Pod Sounds Cool. I'm Studio Steve. I'm a big-time podcast nerd. I'm also an audio engineer and the creative director of the Pod Sounds Cool. Here on our channel, we post tons of podcasting videos, YouTube videos, social media videos, all sorts of helpful things to help you take your content to the next level. So consider subscribing. So what are the biggest things that annoy podcast listeners? Like I mentioned, I've been scouring the interwebs and I found some really cool forums where people talk about this exact thing. And there are some really fun reads. Maybe they can hurt a little bit, but I will leave the links to all of the blog posts that I mentioned here in this video right in the description box below so you can check that out. But why don't we just jump into the top 10 things? Number 1 is bad audio or no editing. Now, this is something the podcasters can get pretty passionate about, but I found this time and time again in every forum that I looked in. There was people complaining about shoddy audio, having weird background noises, saying that almost every show could benefit from a good editor. And also a big complaint I found twice was, we'll edit this out and then not editing any of it out. And there's a common joke that podcasters make, oh, we'll edit that out later, and then they never get around to actually editing it out. It's really important to have good audio quality. This is, in fact, a medium of audio. And even if you are precious about having your podcast be organic and natural conversation, the only way that's actually going to perform well and provide a good experience for your listeners is if you are well researched and you have an outline and you know what you're doing and you've practiced and you've rehearsed and you're not going off on any side tangents. You need to have good audio and you need to employ good editing techniques. Anybody can press record. So a completely unedited podcast is really nothing different than a recorded phone conversation. And I think it's safe to assume that people would enjoy a show, a well-produced show, a lot more than they would some random phone conversation. We are all familiar with the sound of the guest sounding like they're coming from a trash can and the host sounding too overly compressed or like he's screaming, background noises, dogs barking, all sorts of things like that. So definitely take the time to learn about audio production. It's really not that hard. We have a lot of videos here on our channel that can help you. And I also teach editing constantly on our channel and in online courses. And number 2, going off topic. Here is something that we are all too painfully familiar with, and I'm sure you can relate to. When you get into the swing of podcasting, it's really easy to go on to side tangents and topics with your co-host, with your guests. It's really fun to get wrapped up into the conversation. That's part of the fun of podcasting itself. But we need to remember that on the other end of that, there are people actually listening to our podcast. Some of the, ooh, I do that a little bit moments that I found in the forums were when they constantly go off topic about irrelevant stuff, people saying too much banter, too much rambling, going off topic about irrelevant stuff. The entire opening is 15 to 20 minutes of some podcasts in which the host and their guests talk about what they did or what they're up to instead of just getting right to the point and getting to the content. And so many people, myself included, get frustrated with this. I want to know right from the beginning of a podcast episode what to expect, where you're gonna take me, what I can expect from the episode, and then just get to the meat of the episode. And number 3, ads, advertisements, adverts. Podcast listeners really don't like advertisements. I think that the whole history of podcasting has been really fun because many of the podcasts we listen to are free and we don't have to be over inundated with advertisements. It's pretty bad. But things are changing in the podcast world. Apple has now incorporated a subscription option to its podcasters. Spotify has done the same thing. And now that podcasting is getting more popularized, the podcast players and the platforms are going to try to centralize all of the content and going to try to get people more and more independent podcasters under something similar to YouTube. And it's going to become more of a normal thing that we get used to listening to advertisements. But as things are right now, people hate advertisements. There were some comments and some posts in some forums that really had me laughing about this. One of them was, I don't like ads either, but I'd rather hear a straightforward ad than a BS testimonial. It's never convincing to me. Having to hear your favorite host half enthusiastically talk about how much they love their new mattress, watch, set of razors. Or this one was really cool, ads in episode 1, especially ads at the beginning of episode 1. You haven't hooked me in yet. I'm giving your show a chance. Don't advertise to me right at first. I totally relate to that. Here, I hate fake testimonials and it makes me hate the product. This one, again, trying to sound really enthusiastic about their new set of razors, mattresses, whatever, and trying to persuade everyone that they've hired people from ZipRecruiter. Have you hired anyone from ZipRecruiter? We're really used to hearing like 6 or 8 of the same advertising companies on many of our podcasts. So if you're an avid podcast listener, you could totally relate to this. So that can be really frustrating for the listeners. They just want to get to the meat. So the thing here is we do need to monetize. We do need to be able to make money off of our podcast. So as a podcaster, you do have a lot of options, no matter what changes come in the podcast industry, of how you can advertise on your show. You can choose to advertise products that you know your listeners would really relate to, or that you actually use, so it sounds more enthusiastic. You could also choose when and for how long you do host read ads in your show as well. So those are all things to think about, understanding that most podcast listeners really don't like advertisements. Okay, number 4, and this one also hurts a little bit. That's pushing Patreon too hard or reading 5-star reviews. Here was a couple comments I found. Spending 6 minutes at the start of each episode giving an Oscar acceptance speech where they thank people for listening, thank people for subscribing to their Patreon, read out a list of their patrons' usernames. Why? Remind everyone of their social media handles, etc. Shut up and start the episode. That's a little harsh. I hate when they read 5-star ratings on air. Or, sorry to bring it up again, but reading out all the Patreon donors. Ooh. Patreons, period, or patrons, period. Some podcasts get really greedy with that, and I can't stand it. So this is hard for podcasters to think about as well too. But again, we do need to support ourselves. So when you get into looking how you can turn your podcast into a side hustle, and then looking how you can turn that side hustle maybe into a full-time gig, you have to start looking at ways that you can monetize your podcast. And when you get out to the blog posts and the YouTubes and everything else, you are told to start a Patreon, told to start a crowdfunding source. And now, like I mentioned, Apple has an option that you can do that with Apple directly on the platform, which is really exciting. And there's tons of creative ways you can do that. So just keep in mind that this is an annoyance, however, to a lot of listeners. And a lot of podcast listeners and people here on YouTube, they don't want to buy your stuff. They don't want to subscribe. They're voyeuristic in nature. They just want the free content to keep coming. So how can you strike a balance between giving them what they want, turning them into super fans, but then also advertising your services or your crowdfunding and membership platforms? It's tricky, but it can be done, and I believe in you, Podski. Number 5 is self-deprecating comments. This one is something that we're constantly coaching people away from, and it's something that's really easy to slip into because of our insecurities. Something like, oh, our show sucks, or we don't know anything. Or even in the description of your podcast, you'll see people say stuff like, an average show by a couple of average dudes. Or you'll see it all the time on social media, or even hear podcast hosts talk about it on their podcast that we don't edit our podcasts. That's a little self-deprecating too. At a restaurant, you wouldn't want to hear the chef talk about, we don't garnish our food, or our food sucks. You wouldn't eat there. So it's the same with your podcast. And I love that analogy that I took from the Podcast Engineers blog. You'll find that link below. I also really love this little excerpt from that blog, which is give a clear, straightforward, and honest description, but don't ever belittle your show. You want to build a loyal following and not turn people off. Let them know what you can offer in exchange for their time and make sure you deliver. And then it says, before long, they'll keep coming back for more. I love that. I think that's what you need to do. Take yourself seriously. Really believe in yourself. Check in with your insecurities. Why are you protecting this idea of mediocrity or this idea of not editing your shows? Why are you holding yourself back from putting in the work? Are you afraid of stepping into the light? Are you afraid of failure? What is it that you need to address so that you can really step into your awesomeness? Those are some things to think about. Number 6, inside jokes. And then I'm also going to lump into this talking about things that the listeners can't see. Here's a couple examples of people frustrated with this. I don't like inside jokes and the weird tangents that the hosts go on that aren't really related to the topic. And this is from a really fun Buzzfeed article by Remee Patel, where she does 31 slightly annoying things that happen on podcasts. She says, in that, number 9 was, and endure their in-jokes with guest or friend they've got on the show. Guys, Here's another frustrated podcast listener. The idea that podcasters think that their inside jokes and production mishaps are as entertaining to their audience as they are to them. I always believe this to be a part of the no need to edit lie that podcasters sell themselves on to not be bothered putting forth the effort. Now that's a little harsh. I think it's not necessarily that we're afraid to put forward the effort. I think there's something more that goes into it than that. But we do need to always look for ways that we can improve our shows. There's a reason that we've gotten into podcasting. There's a reason you're watching this video. Don't let these things sting too much. Embrace them, face your insecurities, and become a badass podcaster. All right, pod doggy? Okay, and number 7, when hosts talk over each other. This is a big pet peeve, or I should say pet Steve, of mine as well. Here's a few examples of some frustrated podcast listeners. The girls were speaking over each other and barely gave the others time to talk, and the subject changed every 2 seconds. Number 20 from that Buzzfeed article, listening to a podcast that involves a group of people talking and no one bothering to wait their turn to speak. Here's another one. When the hosts keep talking over each other, there's no point in listening if they're just gonna do that. Ooh, don't talk over each other. Give each other some space. And if fighting or arguing is one of your things and you know your audience likes that, make sure that your audience really does like that. Okay, we're getting to the end. Are you hanging with me? Are you offended? What are your comments? Leave them below. Are you angry at me? Are you disagree with everything I'm saying? Is there any I've left out? I love to comment here on YouTube. I will personally comment to anything you leave there in the comment section. Okay, number 8, sounding too scripted. And I'm also going to lump in an annoyance of mine, and that's reading straight from Wikipedia or Google. Here's just one of those, the ones where someone is obviously reading from a pre-written script. A lot of history podcasts do this. So if you're going to read from a script, you can try to write little more casual language pieces into the way you write. And also you might need to practice the way you read, be more animated. Something that has helped me a lot with this is to role play. Try when you're warming up to record your podcast, reading your script in a different accent, maybe a Southern accent or a British accent or whatever kind of accent you want to try to do that isn't already your accent. Sing it in an opera voice. I'm reading my script out loud in an opera voice. This role-playing and being goofy and silly sometimes can really make you look at how you're going to read your script a little differently. And you might also consider throwing in a little outlining and going off script a little bit. Practice that. Make it feel fresh. Make sure that you're being very entertaining. And hey, anybody can access Google. Anybody can Google something or look something up on Wikipedia and read it. Don't do that. Do some research, put it into your own writing, paraphrase it yourself, and make sure you cite your sources. Number 9, and this kind of goes into the bad audio, but it was a big thing I found, and that is sneezing, coughing, eating, drinking, or mouse clicking. A couple examples of this is when they eat and drink in the mic. I can't believe they don't realize how rude and disgusting that is. And from another article here, number 4, don't click the mouse when someone else is talking. So you can see these are serious things that annoy people. Make sure that you train yourself to either sneeze away from the microphone, or better yet, edit your podcast episodes. It will help you to keep the listeners you have and continue to attract new listeners to your pod. And finally, we are going to finish off with number 10, and that is too many opinions, not enough facts. Here's a couple examples of people's frustration with that. It's clear someone only read a headline, but still had the nerve to bring up the topic to bolster whatever story or argument they were making. I hate when people in this internet age get basic facts wrong or go on for minutes trying to remember someone's name or some event instead of looking it up and being done with it. People really want to have a sense that you're sharing facts, that you're getting things from a reliable source, especially depending on the topic of your show. So make sure that you're really doing your fact checking. Make sure that you set aside some time before you just hop in front of the microphone and put some research, put some effort into your show. Some of the best and most successful and most popular podcasts are ones that put a ton of research into their show. I know it could be really hard if you're a solo podcaster or just a team of 2 people working on this. Don't compare yourself to the network shows who have a whole team of people researching and writing and editing and working on their shows. You can get there eventually and grow your team. You can get there sooner than you think, actually, and outsource some of the hard tasks or the time-consuming tasks like social media promotion or specifically podcast editing. You can outsource that to an editing company. You can find people all over the internet that are really good at podcast editing and do it at a really nice rate. That will free up time that you can put more research, more planning, more rehearsing, more development into your podcast, which is going to make people never be annoyed by your podcast. And the last thing I want to say is, who cares if they're annoyed? All you really care about is that you're providing value, and is that you're being creative, and is that you're doing what you wanted to do when you started a podcast to begin with. But having clear goals and not being afraid to put in the work, roll up your sleeves, and face your insecurities is going to make sure that your podcast goes places. So tell me what you thought of my top 10 list. Also, I'd love to know, as a podcast listener, what annoys you the most? What did I miss on the list? Again, you can check the description box below for all of these links. Also, if you're new to podcasting and you're watching this because you don't want to make mistakes going into podcasting, we have a really cool free training that you can attend that will teach you everything you need to know to actually get started podcasting, to do all of the topic research and everything, and actually attract listeners before you even launch your podcast. You can find the link to that free online training right where you're watching this video as well too. Make sure you stay in touch. We love our podskis, and we love to communicate with you here on YouTube. You can also come and find us on all the social media platforms at Pod Sound School. And until next time, happy casting, amigo. And great.